Yes, Jim. Hello, Jim. I'm very happy to have you here again at our university with our colleagues from Greece and other countries as well, and with our students. It is very important you are here again.
Good morning from Rhodes. Hi, Jim. I want to talk about Jim Cummins. Jim Cummins is my mentor. I have been following Jim's work and working with Jim for the last 20 years. I think that Jim has come to Rhodes for 8 different times for a series of talks. In a few minutes when I go to my office and continue, I'm going to get out all my old papers and pictures and tell you the whole story, beginning from 1995.
I would like to welcome you all here to this beautiful spot. We are in the center of the old town of Rhodes. We're at the building of the Castellania. And I would like to introduce myself. I'm Hani Palios. I live here on the island now for 32 years. And I was a board member at the SPOR, which is a big organization of the multicultural families of Rhodes. And in that position I met with Mr. Jim Cummins to hear his lecture. At that time my children were just 7 and 10 years old, so I was really glad to hear him talk about how to raise a child bilingual and the challenges that it would be to confront me with that.
So very difficult to remember all of the things that Jim Cummins has done at the University of Aegean because there has been so much over the last 20 years. So in order to remember, I looked through some old files and found some old papers, invitations inviting people to Jim Cummins' speeches over the years. And that's what I'm going to talk about. But let's see where we began. In 1995, I was seconded from secondary education to the University of the Aegean as Eleni Skourtou's assistant. Eleni introduced me to the work of Jim Cummins because this is what she taught in her lessons. There was very little material in Greek back then on bilingualism and bilingual education. So we used Jim Cummins' work, and because I was born and raised in the United States, I read the material in English and helped the students understand it in Greek. Around 1996, the internet came to the University of the Aegean for the first time. We weren't even sure what the internet was. Living on an island in Rhodes, we were sort of closed off from the rest of the world. The only way to get information was through printed magazines or newspapers or television. So it opened up an entire new world for us. Eleni Skourtou, who was then an assistant professor at the university, the Department of Primary Education, suggested that we send a message to Jim Cummins through the internet, inviting him to give a series of talks at the University of the Aegean. But then it was like sending a message in a bottle. We weren't even sure if he would get the message or if he would accept. And surprisingly enough, Jim did accept.
And I'd like to go back to the beginning of this friendship, meeting of minds, you have called it once. I remember I have worked with your work during the writing of my PhD, and then I wrote you an email and you responded and you came to Greece, and since then, it was 1990s, we kept doing things together and you kept coming back.
Jim Cummins came to the university, I think, for the first time in 1997 to give a series of talks. There were about 6 or 7 different talks then. He came with his family and they lived right across from the university. For us, it was perfectly natural to have children at the university because we had small children as well. So it was perfectly natural for us to be working and to have kids run up and down the hall, scribble on our papers, cut our papers, or interrupt us when we were giving talks. So it fit in perfectly well. And not only did we have all the kids in Eleni's small office, Eleni had 2 dogs, Attica and Junior. Attica was a huge dog and Junior was a little one. So we had the dogs running in and out. And then we had university students, because we had a really big team of students who were always there to assist us. So we had the university students, we also had teachers, we had a very big group. But in spite of this, we managed to get a lot of work done. And the next year, in 1998, Jim came for the second time.
And it is not an exaggeration to say that you affected my life and my way of thinking, because you take one thing that is very specialized, like bilingualism, and you open it up to several important other issues like pedagogy and like society. You have the talent and the passion to listen to people, to be a teacher and a learner at the same time. And also you have the insight to know that everything we are doing is deeply political, and and being an educator and scientist is a political action as well. So thank you for being here, and I wish many happy returns.
My name is Themis Aragositas. I'm a PhD candidate at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education, the University of Toronto, where I also teach modern Greek language and culture. I am in Rhodes now at the University of the Aegean as a member of the organizing committee of the International Conference Rethinking Language, Diversity and Education. The conference is honoring the contributions of Professors Michalis Damanakis and Jim Cummins, 2 scholars who have dedicated their whole academic career in researching and promoting issues of plurilingual and pluricultural education.
Okay, so my children are going normally to the Greek schools, of course, and then twice a week they also go to this International Language Center where they get a class in Dutch language. And of course, it's not always easy for them to cope with the 2 languages, and always you get remarks from different people around you, like the Greek teachers, who say, why you do these 2 languages, it's not good for them, and you're giving them problems, and you should talk only Greek to them. And one of the things that I really was convinced after I heard the lecture of Jim Cummins is that I have to choose my own way, and I have to keep on speaking Dutch to them.
For Jim Cummins, I met Jim as a graduate student at OISE, and I have enjoyed his ongoing support and mentorship throughout my studies in Canada. Jim helped me to understand the challenges and the possibilities of teaching and empowering linguistically and culturally diverse student populations. Jim introduced me to Vasilia Koutis-Kazoulis and Eleni Skurtu, professors here at the University of the Aegean, who joined with the University of Toronto and the University of Crete in organizing this conference. He introduced me to their work on bilingualism, on new media and progressive pedagogic approaches for education. And what I've learned from Jim is that theory cannot be separate from practice, that both have to be supported by research evidence. I think that Jim Cummins is a master in making connections and bringing people together. And I think that's how this conference is organizing, bringing people together from different countries. And that's our vision for education without any boundaries. Jim, thank you so much for everything that you have done for me and for everybody else.
So, just to conclude, 17 years later, my older son is 27, my younger one is 21. The younger one now is in Holland, studying for already 3.5 years, feeling completely comfortable in using both languages, and actually also the third one, the English, which he learned quite easily, just by playing a computer game. And the older one, now 27, he is also feeling very comfortable in both languages. And when I asked him just before I came here, I said, "And did it ever bother you that I was speaking like also Dutch to you and things like that?" And he said, "Come on, Mom, are you nuts? I'm perfectly okay with both languages." And even also he speaks English anyway, also God knows how he learned it. And yeah, that's it actually. So for me it did me a world of good to be to this lecture 17 years ago. Thank you very much.
The highlight, of course, for me was my PhD, which began in 1998. Eleni Skurtu was the supervisor and Jim Cummins was the co-supervisor. Both Eleni and Jim were with me every step of the way. In 1999, we visited Canada and presented our work at OISE, which was very exciting and a big honor for me. And the PhD was about sister classes, so it was a continuation of Jim's work with Dennis Sayers in the book Brave New Schools. There's so much to say about Jim that I could be talking for 5 days. I don't want to get into Jim's theories, but I just want to say is that if you look under all of Jim's theories, if you're sort of like flipping the page and you want to look under each theory that he discusses, I think that the most important part is the power relationships and human being. So Jim is not looking at linguistics for the sake of linguistics, or language for the sake of language, or education for the sake of education. It's language and education for the sake of the student and the child. And it's all about giving all students an equal opportunity, and through this way, making the world a little bit better. So I'd like to thank Jim for all his support, all of these years, and all of the inspiration. And even though he retired last year, I know that he's working even harder now, and may he continue working, traveling and writing, and inspiring people all over the world.